Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher who single-handedly killed God, preached for the rise of the Übermensch, a race that is better than others. The man who lived a life of luxury, wealth, and plenty of women. No, won't cut it? Fine, the truth then. Friedrich Nietzsche, the Prussian philosopher, who started as a man of God himself, who wished and preached best to each and every individual person. The man who lived a life of sadness, delusions, and death. In our history, it's not uncommon that someone is left misunderstood, to the point where we kill them because, you know, they just speak gibberish and we can't have that here. You discovered the elements polonium and radium? Yeah, sure, woman. And I'm Santa Claus. Earth spins around the sun instead of the other way around? Enjoy prison for the rest of your life, lunatic. You cured your husband from his illness by using basic medicine? Say hello to the fishes, witch! Okay, that's Really? Again? Listen, you wanna know the true story about Friedrich Nietzsche. I get that, really. But it's not a nice story. It's one, if not the saddest life I have ever studied. But something is convincing me to tell you anyway. So here we go. This is the story of perhaps the most important and misunderstood philosopher yet, with a beautiful moustache. Historically Facts, Part 6. Our story begins in Rücken, a village in Prussia, which is here in present-day Germany, where a small cry can be heard from the Nietzsche's residency. The firstborn son of Karl and Franziska Nietzsche has entered the world. Now, I don't know if creativity lacked in the family or if they just really loved the king, because they named this little adorable boy Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche, named after the king of Prussia who shared the same name. The brand new family was a simple but religious one, with Papa Karl being a Lutheran pastor for the local church himself. The love between Karl and Franziska continued, and 2 years later, a little sister for the young philosopher was born, Elizabeth, and another sibling, Ludwig, a year after. Life was going great. But that year, tragedy struck the family. The family man, the cheerful, loving, religious dad, got diagnosed with a serious brain illness that caused him excruciating pain and rendered him unable to do even the most basic tasks in life. Seeing his father degrade from the happy memories he had to this state must have been traumatizing for the 4-year-old boy. And unfortunately, that trauma wasn't going to get better anytime soon, or ever actually. Because good old Karl, dead, just like that. And his little adorable 2-year-old brother, dead as well. Unexpected illness, straight up. This ain't a fairy tale, son. Welcome to reality. Seeing his father and younger brother die within months scarred Friedrich massively. And that wasn't only noticed in the history books. At school, he was often described as emotionless and way too mature for his age. Which is to be expected from a traumatized child. But hey, at least he had his friends though. Oh, there he goes, off to live with his father's side of the family. Now, don't worry, little Nietzsche. Life might have kicked you down in the mud, and then some. But even the deepest wounds can be tended to. Just not in this day and age where people simply tell you to suck it up, even if Satan himself revealed the unbearable secrets of our existence to you. Luckily nowadays, there are many options to bear the crushing weights of reality, and one of them is even more accessible and trusted than ever before. Ground News, the sponsor of this video. It's very easy for people to tell you things and overwhelm you with misinformation if you don't ask them for a source. However, I doubt this guy in particular will help us fact check what he said. So why don't we do our own research on things? This is where Ground News comes into play. Their app and website is like a hub for all things news. It gathers articles from all around the world and labels them accordingly to make sure you fully know who is giving you this news coverage. It will tell you the source's political bias, how reliable the reporting practices are, and who owns the companies, like if they are state-sponsored or independently funded. Check them out at ground.news/historically, or you can scan this QR code. For example, if you want to read about the decline in church attendance in America, Ground.news got you covered with 14 articles gathered from multiple sources. Though apparently it's 84% covered by right-wing media, making this development a blind spot for center or left-wing readers. Also, it's always interesting to see how each side of the spectrum formulates the headlines to make them more clickbaity. If you like what you see, go to ground.news/historically to give it a try. And if you sign up through my link, you will get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use to get unlimited access to all these features. Or try it out for less than $1 this month. Check it out in the description, pinned comment, or the info card. With the father and youngest sibling gone from their lives, the family moved to Naumburg, where they lived together with the sisters of Karl. Alas, even after all of this that happened to Nietzsche, which most of it he didn't even understand, he tried to stay positive in life and did his best in primary school to make himself and his mom proud. Which he did. He excelled in Christian theology and went to a Christian high school after, where he also graduated, though with a bit worse grades. It started to look like Nietzsche was going to follow his father's footsteps, and even more so when he decided to study theology at the University of Bonn. Life there started alright, but it quickly worsened. The two leading professors there really didn't like Nietzsche due to his personal views, to the point where they had full-on arguments with each other. Nietzsche's social life wasn't great either. Mind you, he might be a lot older than when he got his traumas, but due to him being the only man in the house and having the responsibility of taking care of the family, he never got to fully recover from his childhood PTSDs, which did make Nietzsche a bit of an outsider. He tried for 2 semesters to get into the university's social life, and even dabbled into composing music, which he apparently really sucked at. But then he decided, you know what, I am genuinely not happy here, and left the university. It was at this point in his life where Nietzsche started to doubt his Christianity. When a person is continuously thrown into a pit and forced to crawl out of it again, just to be kicked back down, they start to wonder why. What's the point of putting all this energy in getting up there again if I keep getting knocked back down anyway? The answer to this question differs from person to person. A hopeless romantic would answer love, an addict would say drugs, and a devout Christian, God. But what if God is no longer an answer for the believer? Giving up and staying down here would be equal to giving up on life, so that can't be an option. The only choice they have is to start looking for something else to give them comfort. And this is exactly where Nietzsche is at right now in his life. Could there be another reason for everything? He wasn't quite sure yet, and when he asked his mother and sister for help and input, they scolded him for leaving his prestigious study and questioning his faith. This was coincidentally also the turning point in his life where his relationship with his family worsened dramatically. But do remember his sister. She will come back to haunt him very much later down the line and even after death. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Nietzsche was left even more mixed and confused than he already was. But he did know that he had to switch studies and get into a new, fresher environment. So he switched his study to philology and applied at the University of Leipzig to study ancient languages. There, his life started to get better. He made a couple friends and even got on some good terms with some of the professors. But he didn't have luck with women, even though he craved love. His faith in Christianity dwindled as his years in university went on, to the point where we can confidently say that he abandoned his love for God. Though it wasn't common for people to abandon their faith in the 1800s, it wasn't completely unique either. After all, the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment had been going well on their way. But still, it was a very hard decision to make living in a very religious Germany. Okay, little pop quiz. What happens if you abandon all your norms and values that you've been told from birth are the truth and solely the truth, and when you have no luck with women? That's right, we are going to a brothel. Now, I don't know if Nietzsche had bad luck, or maybe God took his abandonment a little too personal, because he attracted syphilis immediately after, making him physically weak for the rest of his life. At least wear protection, bro! Nonetheless, this didn't stop Nietzsche from studying hard, and with a passion for languages and many glasses of milk, he excelled as the top of his class, which landed him a job as a professor at yet another university, though now in Basel, where he apparently really did well as a professor. His classes were engaging, and he valued a personal relationship with each and every one of his students. During his pastime, he even volunteered at the local hospital. What a great dude. I'm sure he lived happily ever after. You contracted dysentery and diphtheria by unprotected exposure to the sick you helped cure. You will no longer be able to continue the job that you love, and you will be plagued by unrecoverable health issues for the rest of your life. Bro, I told you! Even though Nietzsche tried hard and long to keep doing what he loved, Life yet again kicked him in the mud and forced him to retire teaching altogether at age 34. But hey, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? God is dead. If you are a Christian yourself, you might be offended or even angry at this bold statement of Nietzsche. But let's talk about what he actually meant with the sentence. The quote is from one of the first books he wrote, named Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It's a philosophical novel about a man called, spoilers, Zarathustra, who lived in a fantasy-like Roman time. The story starts with our main character, who just finished his 10 years of solitude on top of a mountain, where he spent his time studying humanity and its created society. With 10 years gone and plenty of ideals to share with the rest of the world, he decides to pack his things and to descend the mountain to spread this message. He knows it won't be easy, but no one ever said that the best way is the easy way. He descends the mountain and stumbles into a local village where he finds men of God, but also those who strain away from religion. He crosses through the busy market and finds himself a podium to stand on, in an attempt to gather everyone's attention. Originally, he was only noticed by a couple of people, but just like a spreading fire, more and more people waited in great patience for what the man had to say. God is dead. The words cut through the chatter of the market like a hot knife in butter. The usually bustling place, for once, fell silent as the crowd reacted with a mixture of shock, disbelief, and even anger. Some in the crowd gasped, their faces twisted in confusion and outrage. Others exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to process such a bold declaration. A few individuals laughed nervously, dismissing Zarathustra's words as the ramblings of a madman. But amidst the confusion, there were those who listened intently, their eyes fixated on Zarathustra with a newfound sense of curiosity and intrigue. They recognized something in his words, something that resonated with their own doubts and uncertainties about the world around them. God is dead. God remains dead. And we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderer of all murderers? Once again having all eyes on him, he starts to explain his bold statement. For those disconnected from religion, God truly is dead, and we have killed him ourselves. His voice steady despite the thick tension in the air. We chose to sever the ties that bound us to divine authority, to question and challenge the beliefs that once shaped our understanding of the world. In doing so, we confront the daunting task of finding new meaning and purpose in our godless lives. He paused, allowing his words to sink in, before continuing with a sense of urgency. But let us not despair in the face of this existential void. Let us instead embrace the opportunity it presents, to forge our own paths, to create our own values, and to become the architects of our own destinies. And so, my friends, Zarathustra proclaimed, it is time to embrace your inner greatness. It is time to cast off the chains of convention and to chart your own course through the chaos of existence. It is time to become an Ubermensch. Now, if you chose this book for your book summary test, don't take my summary as the truth. Those are not the exact words he said, but it's how we interpret them today. Nietzsche had the great gift of saying things like an ancient Roman historian would. While that definitely makes him cool and stand out from all the average plebs, it also made it kind of impossible for the average person to understand what he was preaching, and more often than not, caused his books to be misunderstood. For example, the phrase "God is dead" angered the religious community, which, mind you, is an overwhelming majority of the people at that time. This caused him to not only fail to become popular, it also caused him to be called mad by many, including his friends and family. But that's just rude. Nietzsche would never turn mad. At least, not yet. One of the most remarkable things about Nietzsche's life is that even though his life was, well, quite horrible to say the least, he stayed positive and kept trying to better everyone else's life. With more and more people abandoning their faith, or as his fictional character Zarathustra would say, facing the void of existence, Nietzsche felt like he needed to guide this movement of people in the right direction, which made sense as for hundreds, if not thousands of years, we humans were raised and told that there are only absolute rights or absolute wrongs. There was no grey area in between. And on top of that, we were taught that whatever the church or a politician said was to be blindly believed. Something that we couldn't think about doing in our current day and age, without getting a cold shiver down your spine. The people needed guidance in this new life. And here, Nietzsche came up with 7 recommendations to become an Ubermensch. 1. Embrace individualism. People should strive to overcome norms and expectations that society has put on us, to discover their true selves. 2. Exercise self-overcoming. To develop yourself as a person, you need to continuously challenge yourself with hardships and obstacles, to grow and improve to become a better human. 3. Live with passion. Nietzsche argued that individuals should pursue their dreams and passions with all their might, and that a life lived with passion and intensity was worth way more than one lived passively. Number 4, embrace suffering and adversity, ties in with that as well. When life doesn't go your way, embrace it and appreciate the suffering, as it will make you more resilient and stronger as a person. 5. Create your own values. Nietzsche famously criticized the church and established regimes for forcing their values on their followers. He argued that people should create their own values based on their unique experiences and perspectives on life. He believed that true morality comes from within rather than being imposed by external authorities. Number 6. Be true to yourself. Trust your own instincts and intuitions above anything else. In the end, it's you who is your best friend and also your worst enemy. And finally, the 7th recommendation, embrace the eternal recurrence. Friedrich Nietzsche created the concept of eternal recurrence, arguing that a person should live their life exactly in a way that they would want to relive that very same life that they have now for eternity. Basically emphasizing to live to be authentic and to enjoy every single moment that you have. What is most surprising about those 7 recommendations is that it contains genuine love and care for those who want to listen to it. We went through Nietzsche's life earlier, and we can safely say that it hasn't been nice to him. Most people who would have gone through this would have hated or cursed everything around them for treating them so unfairly. But Nietzsche turned that hate and disgust in love and appreciation instead, just like he recommended others to do so as well. Unfortunately, those recommendations only work on people when they listen. And that was the last thing that the majority of the people ended up doing. Nietzsche was outcast by society, and wanting to get away from it all and recharge himself, he went on a year-long vacation with 2 of his philosopher friends, Lou Andreas Salome and Paul Ree. They rented a house together and started planning to create their own society with only like-minded people. But love got in the way. Both Paul and Nietzsche fell for Lou, and both of them even proposed to her, and both of them got rejected. Nietzsche thought he finally found the love of his life and couldn't let her go. He ended up proposing 3 times to her, and every single time got rejected. The rivalry between Paul and Nietzsche caused the idea of a philosopher's utopia to fall apart, and ended the vacation earlier than planned, where then Lou revealed that she was only there to see if women and men could live together without sexual desires, basically saying she used Nietzsche for her own studies. Additionally, randomly as well, she married Paul anyway, leaving Nietzsche heartbroken and altogether even more broken than before. Every man, woman or child has a breaking point, a point where you just can't anymore. And for Nietzsche, finally, but way too late, it had reached. In 1899, only at 44 years old, reality kicked in and overwhelmed the philosopher. When walking down the streets in Italy, he noticed a man beating up a horse with a whip and ran towards the animal, flung around its neck to protect it from the whip and cried, "I understand you, I understand you." He then collapsed on the floor and his vision went black. Nietzsche never recovered from that day, and the rest of his life was rendered unable to take care of himself and was unresponsive when spoken to. He completely fell into madness. He was forced to move in with his sister Elizabeth, who he really despised. And things took a turn for the worst when Elizabeth took the creative liberty to gather the materials and writings of Nietzsche that he couldn't finish and interpret them in her own ways, completely changing what he argued for at the end of his life, causing him to be even more misunderstood. Nietzsche passed away a year later and got buried next to his father Karl, who was also buried in his hometown at Rücken. his misery didn't end there, because Elizabeth continued to misinterpret his works with her own personal beliefs, which just happened to be those of fascistic nature. This caused Nietzsche's work to be praised and loved by the Nazis, who used his own word Übermensch as a way to say that the pure German-blooded race was better than others. Even a certain man called Adolf Hitler expressed his love for Nietzsche, and even visited Elizabeth herself in the same house Nietzsche lived in his last years, to express how great Nietzsche was. The thing is, Nietzsche despised fascism and anti-Semitism. He praised individualism and didn't like authorities telling how people should live their lives. So even though he was put in the Nazis' classroom, he didn't belong there in the slightest. His name was cleared after the Second World War, and in the midst of the Cold One, people started to appreciate him and follow his teachings. And in the day and age we live today, with atheism and individualism at its peak, which can be argued could be for the better or for the worst, we almost entirely live in the world that Friedrich Nietzsche tried to guide us to, or maybe even warn us about. But there are two things that we do know for certain. Firstly, Nietzsche was way ahead of his time. And unfortunately, whether you like it or not, we are still human. And the crushing weight of reality is too much for any man to handle. Or as Nietzsche himself would put it, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process, he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you.